Yeah, one more point about that sun in the winter. I swear there were maximum 5 days last year that we had to use the stove during the day.
Yeah, if that.
If that. Maybe, I remember 3, but I upped it just a little because I couldn't believe that was it.
Yeah, so I mean, does anybody have any more, okay, questions? Questions energy related, because we're going to sort of move on to stuff. Go ahead.
Repeat the question.
Oh, okay, that's see, it's hard to think about it. The question was, we were talking the other day, we also use some of our animals to like keep other animals warm. Like our oxen, they don't need to go in the winter, but we put them in anyway because some of our animals that need warm, well, a 2,000-pound animal puts off a lot of heat, so they actually, you know, keep the barn quite a bit warmer than if you didn't put them in. And then you also have the manure in a neat spot to scoop it up and put it into a compost pile or a biodigester. So I mean, yeah, we're always thinking of things like, well, this needs to be heated. Well, how about we just move the animals there? Like that, you know, as far as energy efficiency goes, it's just putting somebody somewhere else. The guy next to you have a question? Okay, with the south face thing, you're really shooting for the winter gain, and the sun's real low in the sky, so as it tracks east and west, the sun can shine in. And then the cool thing is, in the summertime, the eave of the roof blocks the sun, because that's the other thing too. You don't want to get all that heat in your house during the summer, so that's why they'll put normally a little bit bigger eave on that side of the house, so it blocks it in the wintertime. Yeah. I mean, that is probably the easiest thing you can do. Like if you're building a house, obviously you're not going to pick up your house and turn it. But yeah, if you're building a house, doing that is by far the easiest, like best saving money, energy, all that stuff that you can do.
Or building an addition onto
yeah, I mean, it's just basically if the south-facing windows are big and the north ones are smaller, because windows generally let out a lot of heat, and also putting in good windows, you know, it's all that type of stuff. It does pay for itself, and off the grid, it pays for itself really quickly. That's something else I'll just mention real quick. It's like solar panels for an off-the-grid house have to be enough to produce all their energy, whereas typically what people do when they grid tie is it's just producing energy during the day, and then they're buying the energy at night. So they're like selling it to the grid at a higher price and then buying it back at a lower price. So you're getting, excuse me. So you're actually getting, like, you don't need as much wattage because they're kind of giving you a little extra money there in the buyback rates.
I have a point just about heating. So it's true that we only use the wood stove and passive solar heat for the winter, but for code, I believe, and also for insurance purposes, we're required to have an alternate source of heating for the house. So we have what's called radiant heat in the floors, and the previous people did it, and we've tested it each year to make sure it still works, and other than that, we don't use it at all.
But we're thinking about maybe like there's gasification boilers you can get instead of propane, because radiant heat's just such a nice under your feet heat. So that could be a nice thing to switch to.
Another thing we've talked about, but we haven't really done anything about it, is creating a heat sink during the winter. So when the sun comes in, we can actually store that heat, so we don't have to start the stove at dusk. You know, maybe we don't even need to use it at night at all.
Yeah, a lot of times, in the room that's south facing, they'll make it tile or brick or something that'll absorb all that heat. Yeah, yep. And like that's what we did in our greenhouse. We put 55-gallon drums. Yeah, and a dark color also will help absorb heat. But yeah, our greenhouse, it's like it gets too cold at night, so we put a bunch of 55-gallon drums full of water in there, so they'd absorb all that heat during the day, kind of make it not as hot in there during the day, and then at night release that heat, so you know the greenhouse won't freeze as quickly. So, go ahead. Solar furnaces, do you mean like steam stuff can be pretty nasty, so I haven't looked too much honestly into steam, because there's a lot of fun things in that too, but yeah, I haven't really looked at any steam stuff, just because steam pressures can be dangerous, and I know I said everything's dangerous, but so I haven't looked into that very much, but I always kind of go in circles, so I may change my mind and come back to that and decide differently. But something that would be cool, like on that note, is sort of like using your wood stove to heat your water heater. And I know they make kits for that sort of thing. So just anywhere you can get an extra use out of something, you really want to go for.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on upgrading
So he's talking about subterranean housing, and I haven't thought about it for our house, but I've looked into it, and I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff in that market, and you know, the ground up here stays about 45, 50 degrees year round. So if you put your house under there, your cooling and heating load is only, you know, to that 70-degree mark or so, or wherever you're comfortable at. So by having that, and like then the whole ground is your heat sink. So once you heat it up, it stays hot for a really long time, and stuff like that. So I mean, those things are definitely interesting things that people are doing. Up here, it's all granite. So you know, I don't know what type of, you know, equipment you're going to need to, you know, dig a house into granite, but that I could sort of see being an issue up here.
Get your explosives license. To go back to solar for a moment, one of the energy things we haven't talked about a lot is cooking. We have a propane stove, and when we got into canning, we were noticing that the stove was on, you know, 6 hours a day. You're heating a lot of water. You're spending a lot of energy, so we're now looking into, we have a wood stove that we picked up at a wood cook stove that we, separate from the one that heats the house, that we picked up at a antiques, relics dealer for very little. But we're also looking into things like solar ovens, not for heating the house, but for, you know, to cook bread, to make stews, to anything that we can do. And we will be doing the canning this year with wood instead of propane, so that'll be a nice little experiment.
Lots of food. So
Yep.
we're actually.
Anybody any other questions on energy stuff before
Microphone. They can't all hear you.
All right. Well, then we.
Back to this. Sweet.
Let's talk about that.
So this might be a good moment to talk about our idea of sustainability. As Neil mentioned, we're not trying to save the earth, we're trying to maintain our property in a reasonable, responsible way. And so it's more an attitude, I think, that we sort of think of as you try to use everything. And so anything that's coming out of an animal or coming out of a plant, you're asking yourself, is there something I could do with this? And not is there one thing I could do with this, but are there multiple things that I can do with this stuff? And so, you know, one of the examples that you have is the first thing you do is you have a cow, he eats grass, you eat the cow, you're done. And you look at that a little bit and you think, well, you know, there's stuff coming out of the end of the cow, maybe we could use that. And so one of the things you could do is throw it in a big pile and let it compost over a year or 2 years. And then you think, well, maybe I could do something a little faster. And so you end up, by looking at all this stuff, you end up looking for paths like, I'll take an ox, I'll put him in a field, crap all over the place, and I'll put chickens on that. So they will break up the manure. They'll get, well, not necessarily. They'll get nutrition from that, they'll find the bugs that are eating it, and the one thing about cattle is they don't like to eat where they pooped. So if the chickens break all that up and the rain helps to get it into the soil, they'll come back and eat that, whereas otherwise they won't. So you also then ask yourself, well, okay, now I got chicken poop all over the ground. Who likes that? Oh, pigs like that.
Pigs eat
so, yeah, pigs will eat anything. And what pigs won't eat, worms will eat. So we're raising worms too. But so we sort of think of, you know, the circle of life isn't a circle. And so we're always looking for things like, you have an animal, you got skin, you got fat, you're just going to throw this stuff away. Can you make something out of it? Oh, hey, we can make biodiesel. Oh, you got cow manure that's in the barn, it's not in the field. We're not going to take it out in the field so the chickens can eat it. But what we might do is put it into a biodigester, get methane out of it. Oh, we can use the methane to make biodiesel. Oh, and then we can take what's left of that, and that's fertilizer, which we got immediately instead of composting for 3 years. So we're always looking for any way, you know, that you, and so you know, manure, brown is the new green, we like to say.